I'll be running a naked reactor and making Meltdown in full space exposure. It is such a dangerous move, but also very effective for the Great Escape. But before that, I need to reach the target planet first. I will be using two different ways to land on the new planet, a safe one and the risky one. Steam engines are my favorite choice of rocket in my regular colonies. They are relatively easy to research and set up than other advanced engines. Having a tall available building height generates the most power tied with the most advanced hydrogen engines. And the fuel, which is apparently steam, is rather cheap. You can have the most comfortable and safe journey during the space travel using steam rockets. The downside is that the speed is really slow, probably the slowest of all rockets. But for most colonies, arriving 1 or 2 cycles later doesn't really matter. It's just something you should avoid if you are speedrunning. For the rocket interior, I have prepared bottled oxygen and a canister drainer to release them smoothly. Since canister drainer are introduced in the game, this is a really nice way to supply the crew with oxygen, because it does not require any power and has a very small footprint of just 1 × 2. What about food? Well, we don't need food. Because the target planet is so close, even a slow steam engine could arrive in about 1 cycle. And when we trailblaze the crew, their calories will be magically reset. In fact, this mechanic is so powerful. It can even allow you to survive without ever eating. I have indeed done this challenge, make a great thriving colony without ever eating. Check the video link if you haven't watched it. And here we arrive at the new planet and we are ready to trailblaze. The first thing to do is to take a peek at the planet's surface and look for a good place to land. It should have easily diggable minerals on the surface, so we can build ladders to get back to rocket. You might notice I have Atmosuit stock, but not checkpoint, because I'm not planning to use the Atmosuits yet. I have prepared a few oxygen masks in the rocket as well, and the dupe will be using this. It might be scary to leave the rocket with just an oxygen mask, but here's a good rule of thumb to remember. If you have 2 dupes trailblazing and are able to build the rocket platform right away, then 2 normal dupes in fully charged oxygen mask can survive easily. I said normal dupe, so don't do it with a mouth breather or a dupe with negative building stat. That could be really risky. don't plan to fully colonize this planet. Once we actually land, we just need to deconstruct the Trailblazers, then build the rocket platform and a minipod on it. There's even another planet close to this one, and I plan to trailblaze both of them in one trip, so I have brought some more lead on the rocket to rebuild the Trailblazer and be ready to fly to the next planet. Building all those things and landing the rocket is pretty fast. It took less than half a cycle, and we are ready again to fly to the next planet. When I was playing, at first I decided to bottle some steam so I can fly to even further planets. That's why I'm pumping to the canister filler. But later, I decided to do a more exciting plan, which is the risky way of landing I mentioned in the intro. So the bottled steam are not going to be used after all. So why are we doing this touch and go style landing? Because I need to build 5 mini pods before I can start charging the Temporal Tear opener. I have one pod at home, one at the teleporter planet, and I would definitely have to land on Tundra planet to activate the Temporal Tear opener. So that's why I still need to trailblaze 2 planets to make up for 5. Here we are at the second new planet. I have another pair of oxygen masks, and the tubes will land in a similar way. The dupes are slightly wounded when the rocket landed on top of them in the previous planet. But as they trailblaze again, the health points would also be reset, so the wounds won't accumulate. I have also changed their schedule right now, so they will not start downtime or sleeping right after landing. As I mentioned before, Trailblazing resets all their health status, so they have no need for downtime or sleeping anyway. Everything went smoothly. In just about 2 minutes, the mission in Second Planet is also done. Now we can take off, and all that is left is to reach the Tundra planet and charge the Temporal Tear opener. For the Tundra planet, I will be switching to CO2 rockets, and I will send 2 of them. This is the first CO2 rocket I am constructing. And just a note if you are playing this mod, the rocket interiors will not have space exposure when initially built. But after you save and reload, the space exposure will appear in the rocket. So I am building dry walls on every tile of the interior. The solo nose cone is really small, so besides the mandatory rocket control station, I'm only fitting a telescope and a manual generator inside. Food and oxygen and 2 charged Atmos suits are brought in and left on the ground. We cannot afford the luxury to have storage bins or fridges. The oxygen is released smoothly by the canister drainer, and food is unrefrigerated but it's a pickled meal, so it should last for a long time anyway. And for outhouses, well, I'm sorry. I forgot to first put in an atmosphere, so the lamp overheated and broke, but it's never too late to find that out before we actually launch. By dropping materials on the ground instead of using storage bins, we save a lot of space, which is very scarce in this small interior. But on the other hand, it requires a lot of manual relocate assignment and often easy to launch before something has been delivered. So that's a really big trade-off. After a long wait for the duplicates to deliver the materials, we are ready to launch the first CO2 rocket. It looks really weird, but yes, launched rockets can safely overlap with other rockets. Maybe this is a 3D game after all. Right after the launch, I'm preparing the second CO2 rocket right away. So the plan is like this. The first CO2 rocket with a telescope will reveal the star map and a crash land on the Tundra planet to set up a rocket platform. The second CO2 rocket will carry most of the essential materials I need and more dupes to properly land on the Tundra planet. The second rocket doesn't need a telescope, so I can put more things inside, including oxygen masks, docks for the dupes to work on the Tundra planet, and as much storage bin as I can to reduce the time I need to micro. I have not included the oxygen max checkpoint yet, so I can put one more storage bin. After the rocket actually launches, I can replace the storage bin with the checkpoint. I'm using the skill scrubber for one of the dupe I'm sending to Tundra Planet. Since I'm not really providing any decent morale there, I better not have too much unneeded skills on them to prevent serious stress problems. Before the second CO2 rocket launches, I need to make sure I have all the things I need. Extra CO2 to refuel, so I can bridge the Temporal Tear with the same rocket after the charging is done. Enriched uranium to run the reactor. Some lead and iron to build the wires. More food and oxygen to sustain the dupes. A lot of coal to serve as the main power supply to run the Red Bull generators. I have already scouted the Tundra planet with my first CO2 rocket. Their mission is almost done, but I want to make them wait in space till the second rocket launches. Although the rocket interior is small, it's still more comfortable to stay in the rocket than crashing onto a new planet. Even with storage bin, with a list of materials I plan to bring, it can still take a few cycles for the dupes to finish delivering. Sometimes, I think oxygen not included is kind of like another popular clay games, Don't Starve Together. You travel to a distant place for a tough mission, only to find out you forgot to bring something, and will have to spend days running back and forth to pick up those things you have missed. In Cycle 87, I have finally finished all the delivering and checking, and are ready to launch the second rocket. I have set the goal to finish Great Escape before Cycle 100. There seems to be very little time left, but the naked CO2 rocket with only the engine and the solar nose cone can travel incredibly fast, at about 4 hex per cycle. So we are really still on schedule. We can definitely reach Tundra Planet before Cycle 90. The crew of the first rocket is a bit stressed by now because they have been waiting in space for quite a while, and they have bad food and no outhouses. But soon they will be crash landing, and that will reset all their stress down to 5%. Since the second rocket is about to reach the Tundra planet in less than one cycle, it is time for the first rocket crew to do the crash landing mission. They will put on the Atmos suit I carefully preserved and abandon the rocket. An abandoned rocket will eject all the crew to the nearest planet safely in an escape pod. All the materials, gas, liquids, or fuel will also be included in the rocket debris and then with them, although half of these will be lost in the process. Now we have landed on the Tundra planet, the two dupes will have to build a rocket platform from scratch so the second rocket can land properly. This is possible because the Tundra planet always bound with lead metal tiles that I can use, so I'm confident to not bring any refined metal with me in this operation. As you can see, none of the minerals are on the surface. I have to dig down to reach them. This means I have to be careful planning the digging route. Otherwise, they will be stuck on the surface without any way to obtain minerals to build tiles or ladders. A full Atmos suit provides 75 kilograms of oxygen, which is more than one cycle, so they should have plenty of time to get the lead from the metal tiles, build the rocket platform, clear out the way for ladders, and welcome the second rocket on landing. And here comes the rocket. We have successfully landed without any trailblazers, rovers, or orbital cargo module. Now it's time to start setting up for the Red Bull generator and the nuclear reactor. First, I need to prepare the power source, the coal generators. And of course, the fifth and final mini pod so I can activate the Temporal Tear opener. I built it this high because later on, the entire area on the right will be full of nuclear radiation and I don't want my dupes to accidentally enter that dangerous zone. No active cooling will be provided for the coal generators, but as long as I build some dry walls to hold their CO2 exhaust, it should be sufficient to conduct the heat from the freezing surface and prevent them from overheating. The nuclear reactor could be very dangerous if not handled properly, but its radiation will decay as it gets further from the center, and will reach at most 25 tiles away. That's why I am putting it so far from my rocket. One good thing about oxygen mask docks is that they don't use power, and since the canister drainer is also power-free, that means I will never have to worry about my dupes being stuck in a rocket with no mask to use, even when there is no power. The reactor takes a very long time to construct. Finally, it's about to be finished. I have also finished all other Redbow generators, reflectors, and wiring. All that we need is to input a little enriched uranium and water to kickstart the reactor. I have a disconnected liquid pipe already built, so by connecting it as the last step, I was able to start the reactor without any dupe interaction. Here we go! Meanwhile, I'm using the bottled CO2 to refill the rocket for traveling to the Temporal Tear. A normal reactor build usually involves a lot of steam turbine to utilize the enormous amount of heat from the reactor. But my plan is to generate as much red boat as possible in a very short time. Containing the steam will only absorb a lot of radiation and does no good to me. Also, a proper build will take much more time to set up. I have prepared very little water as coolant for the reactor, so after those water are consumed, the uranium inside the reactor will heat up very quickly and the reactor will melt down. When the meltdown happens, the reactor will explode and bombard its surroundings, causing meteor damage. It might break a building or two, but that's not the major threat. The important thing is that the radiation it emits will be doubled, from about 10,000 to 20,000 rays per cycle near the reactor. Whoa, 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 no, Turner! Don't go near the reactor. That will kill you in a few seconds. He's probably trying to fix some damaged buildings, so I have to call him back immediately and lock him with door access. The only thing we really need to fix is this broken wire, and working for a brief moment this far from a meltdown reactor is fine. So here's the reason I want to make the reactor melt down. Double radiation definitely helps for charging the Temporal Tear opener as fast as possible, and the radiation will decay completely after 5 cycles, so it's easy to clean up the mess. Also, that allows me to run a reactor without preparing a lot of coolant and uranium to sustain the nuclear reaction. I think I have brought only like 100 kilograms of water. If I were to run it normally, I'll need something like 2 tons of water per cycle. The Temporal Tear opener needs 10,000 of red bolts to charge it completely. Currently, the charging process is at 9%, so that means I already generated 900 red bolts in a very short time. Some of my dupes still got major radiation sickness and started vomiting. But as long as they don't get more exposure and develop extreme radiation sickness, it should be fine. There's actually a storage limit on the Temporal Tear opener itself, and has a fixed rate to convert the red bolt into charge progress. Right now, we could see I'm outgrading the Temporal Tear opener by providing red bolts faster than it could consume. That shows how powerful a meltdown reactor could be. I believe the Temporal Tear charged at about 3000 red bolt per cycle, so I need at least 3.3 cycles to finish the charging progress. There's only about 7,000 kilocalories of food in my rocket. It seems like food is almost running out, but that on top of the 3 dupes' stomach should sustain them for about 5 more cycles, and that should be enough to finish the charging. The radiation from the Meltdown reactor decays really quickly. Initially, it's about 20,000 rads per cycle near the reactor, but now it's only about 12,000 rads per cycle. So 3 Red Bull generators seems to be an overkill initially, but if I had only built 2 of them, that would not be enough once the rates has decayed so much. Now the setups are all finished. All we have to do is to wait a bit until the Temporal Tear opener is charged and activated, and shoot the rocket to breach the Temporal Tear. But the opener can be activated without any dupe interaction. So actually, we can launch the rocket in advance before the charging is finished. There's still like 10% of charging to do, but I believe the remaining part should complete on its own. So it's time to officially launch the rocket and go for the Temporal Tear. The dupes are still vomiting, but the CO2 engine is so fast. It will reach the Temporal Tear 6 tags away in just about 1.2 cycles. So I should be setting them free in just a little while. The opener is fully charged. Now I just have to press the big red button and fire the opener. The next step is to embrace the incoming meteors. Why? Because these meteors are made of fullerene. This is a secret way to make supercoolant without going to the water planet or drilling. "80% stress. They're about to freak out, but we're just 3 hacks away. So like half a cycle to go." We have also run out of food on the rocket, but all of these will not matter anymore. And finally, after 96 cycles of hard work, surviving the ridiculous 100% space exposure challenge, we have breached the Temporal Tear. Here comes the celebration for completing the Great Escape. But don't click away yet. I have a new challenge plan announcement in the end of the video. I'm always kind of like the minimalist. I've completed so few achievements while going through the Great Escape, and I have not used any plastic or steel in the entire game at all. No oil or hydrogen either. Maybe one day I could make a video on surviving while completing the least amount of achievement possible, rather than completing all achievements. But wait, I have two new challenges currently on my plan. The Permanent Zombie Challenge. All my dupes are infected with zombie spores, and they will last for infinitely long. The only way to cure them and beat the challenge is to find the medicine, the real vial. Until they are cured, these dudes will be worse than the worst dude you can ever imagine. Or the second one, start with 50 dudes and survive for 50 cycles, the popular YouTuber challenge. Can I beat this challenge easily? Or will I struggle to make them survive? Which challenge interests you more? Let me know in the comments below.